It's an absolutely leaky day in the world of Magic the Gathering. Wizards can't keep anything under wraps anymore. So we've got leaks from Modern Horizons 3 and Assassin's Creed as well. And if that wasn't enough for you, there is a Cowboy Bebop Magic the Gathering crossover that is absolutely amazing. 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Magic. History.
I'm an old wizard!
The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt. Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles. My friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for leaks and Cowboy Bebop good times. And my health is on the mend, so I've got the energy to talk about all of it with you. So let's just dive right in. We're gonna start out talking about the Assassin's Creed leak. So this one comes to us by way of a mistake over on the Game Nights Archidex page. And if you don't know what that is, basically it's a place where you can find deck lists of what they have played in their videos. Well, guess what? Somebody messed up and a list of cards from Assassin's Creed appeared on there. So let me go ahead and put it up on the screen for you there, and we will go through it. Now, we don't have the actual physical version of the cards to look at. So what we're looking at is a list here. You can see it starts out with Merciless Harlequin, but I just want to draw your attention to the bottom of the list where it points out the Animus, which is something we've already seen and know exists. So top of the list, we've got Merciless Harlequin. This is a 3 mana value assassin with an enter the board draw ability. Then you've got Arno Dorian, a 4 mana assassin that is a +2/+0 lord, I guess boosts up all your assassins. You got Aya of Alexandria, a 4 mana assassin that makes tokens when it hits your opponents. You've got Bayek of Siwa, who is a 5 mana cost assassin with double strike. I guess it gives all of your guys double strike because it says team double strike. Then you've got Desmond Miles. This is a 2 mana value assassin with surveil. After that, we've got the Brotherhood Regalia. This is 2 mana for unblockability equipment. After that is overpowering attack. So this costs either 5 or 3 mana and gives you an extra combat. I'm presuming how it works is for 3 mana, it gives you an extra combat for one of your guys, and for 5 mana, it gives you combat for all of your guys. It could also just be the same kind of thing where everybody gets an attack, but if you do it for 3 mana, they're exerted for a turn and you don't get to untap them next turn. Something along those lines. After that, we've got Blood-Soaked Insight, which is a double-faced land. Then there's Ripples of Undeath, which is mill and draw. So this leak isn't quite as fleshed out as the other leak that we're going to talk about. That's the Modern Horizons 3 Flipwalker leak, where we have the actual cards to take a look at. So let's jump in, we'll look at that, and then we'll talk about Cowboy Bebop and a travesty that's happening to me as well. So for the Modern Horizons 3 leak, we have 4 different Flipwalkers to talk about, and these walkers all show the origin stories of different planeswalkers, which I absolutely love. We're starting out with Tamiyo, who is 1 blue for the Inquisitive Student side, a 0/3 flyer legendary Moonfolk wizard. Whenever Tamiyo attacks, you investigate, so you get to make a clue token, and that ties into the other ability. Whenever you draw your 3rd card in a turn, exile Tamiyo, then return her to the battlefield transformed under her owner's control. Now, Tamiyo shifted into being a planeswalker when she found a book that came from another plane. Up until then, Tamiyo didn't know that there were other worlds. And that's what actually ignited her spark, the realization that her world was just one amongst many. And so she was flung through the blind eternities and ended up studying a whole bunch of different worlds and taking their stories and knowledge and putting them down on scrolls. And these scrolls grant her magical abilities. So you see this on the seasoned scholar side, where she has gained these abilities. She starts out with 2 loyalty. The first ability is +2 until your next turn. Whenever a creature attacks you or a planeswalker you control, it gets -1, -0 until end of turn. So she does have some built-in protection in that way. The second ability is -3, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. If it's a green card, add 1 mana of any color. And you'll notice with these planeswalkers, each and every one of them cares about you having cards of particular colors. Now, the ultimate ability on this is -7, draw cards equal to half the number of cards in your library, rounded up. You get an emblem with you have no maximum hand size. That is a very epic ultimate ability, but unfortunately, it feels pretty difficult to pull off considering the fact that you have to activate the first ability 3 times to get her up to 8 loyalty. So you gotta keep this around for multiple turns, and it only takes 1 power off the attacking creature when you're using that first ability. So I feel like it's gonna be difficult to really get that ultimate payoff, but if you do, it's going to be very gross. The next planeswalker we have to talk about is Ral the Monsoon Mage. So he is 1 red and 1 for a 1/3. He makes it so instants and sorcery spells that you cast cost 1 less mana. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell during your turn, flip a coin. If you lose the flip, Ral deals 1 damage to you. If you win the flip, you may exile Ral. If you do, return him to the battlefield transformed under his owner's control. Now you'll notice, unlike Tamiyo, who automatically transforms, Ral doesn't require that you transform him. You have the option of saying, you know what, I'm not actually going to flip him over, I'm going to keep using his coin flip ability. Because Magic doesn't have a ton of coin flip cards, and if you want to play a coin flip strategy, sometimes you're going to want to keep Ral on his front facing side. So for Ral, the reason that he basically had his Planeswalker Spark ignite is he moved out of his family's home after his mother passed away. His father was awful. He ends up in the employ of Nicol Bolas out doing these different tasks because he's a rain mage using his skills. Now what happens is he comes home to find out that the person that he's in love with was cheating on him. He basically catches them in the act. And that level of emotion that flowed through him as a result is what caused his Planeswalker Spark to trigger. Most Planeswalkers ignite their spark under extreme duress, very high emotion situations. So Tamiyo having that happen as a result of finding a book from another world is an interesting departure from the normally negative way that people have their sparks ignite. So Ral ends up getting flung across the blind eternities. Anytime your spark ignites, you literally get thrown through the blind eternities to another world. That's the way it works. So Ral gains mastery over his powers, and that's what you see on the flip side of the card with Ral Leyline Prodigy. So he enters the battlefield with an additional loyalty counter on him for each instant and sorcery spell you've cast this turn. And that's another reason you might not want to flip him over right away, because he gives you a discount on casting your instants and sorceries, so you can cast more of them, so you get a beefier loyalty once you flip him over. Otherwise, you're really just going to start with a base level of 3 if you've just flipped him over on the first go, because you get the 2 that he starts with, and then you'll get 1 for having cast an instant or sorcery, because that's required to even do the coin flip. So Ral will never show up with less than 3 loyalty. His first ability is +1. Until your next turn, instants and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. That's kind of underwhelming, but at the same time, you could use it to build up some crazy storm nonsense. -2 ability is Ral deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Draw a card if you control a blue permanent other than Ral. Remember, I said all of these walkers care about you having cards of particular colors. And the ultimate ability is -8. Exile the top 8 cards of your library. You may cast instants and sorcery spells from among them this turn without paying their mana costs. This is an interesting kind of tension between trying to have a bunch of cheap instants and sorceries to build up his loyalty and also to flip over Ral as quick as possible. But when you're casting a bunch of spells off the top, you're probably going to have more expensive instants and sorceries to get the most benefit. But honestly, when you're digging 8 cards deep, I wouldn't be surprised if half those cards were instants and sorceries, and you can get a lot of value out of it. But just like I said with Tamiyo, building up to the ultimate can be pretty tricky. If you've cast a bunch of instants and sorceries before you flip him over, then that's a big difference because you'll get that loyalty boost. But if he's starting out at the regular 3 loyalty from you flipping him over after only casting 1 spell, then you're going to have to use that first ability 5 separate times to have any real chance at doing this ultimate. The secondary ability, the -2, is pretty decent in that you'll always have at least 3 loyalty when you flip him over. So if you need to, you can use him to do a little bit of ping damage around and get that card draw without losing him due to that loss of loyalty, right? So this is a pretty interesting, actually, this is the most interesting overall of the flip walkers we're going to be taking a look at today. After that, we've got Sorin of House Markov, one of the old school walkers who is insanely powerful. So Sorin is 1 black and 1 for a 1/4 with lifelink. In this incarnation, he's a human noble because he hasn't become a vampire yet. He has Extort, which is interesting because this is normally an ability we only ever saw on Orzhov cards, specifically from Ravnica. So Extort lets you, whenever you cast a spell, you can pay either a white or a black, and if you do, each opponent loses a life, and you gain that much life. So obviously in Commander, that scales up and can give you more than 1 life, but in a one-on-one match, it's just your opponent down by 1, you up by 1. His ability says at the beginning of your post-combat main phase, if you gained 3 or more life this turn, exile Sorin of House Markov, then return him to the battlefield transformed. Now, the origin of how Sorin actually became a planeswalker is insane. His grandfather, Edgar, was basically a lord, and his lands were suffering intense famine, and people were getting wiped out. So, he made a deal with a demon to learn the secrets of vampirism. And he ends up turning himself into a vampire along with a number of other members of the family. But Sorin wants nothing to do with it. But against his will, they basically hold him down and force him to drink this potion that will turn him into a vampire. And unbeknownst to anyone, Sorin had a Planeswalker spark in him. Planeswalker sparks only exist in basically 1 out of 1,000,000 individuals. And they don't always ignite. There are people who could have been planeswalkers, but because nothing traumatic enough happened to them during their lifespan, they don't actually ignite their planeswalker spark, and they just live a normal life. So Sorin here ends up getting flung through the blind eternities after having been turned into a vampire by his own family. So you get Sorin the Ravenous Neonate. And if you don't know what neonate means, it's basically a baby, somebody who's four weeks or younger, like the first month of their life. So this is Sorin in the first month of his unlife, which is really cool. It has Extort on this side as well. It has +2 create a food token, which feels a little bit weird, but once you get to the next ability, it'll be more obvious as to why this is the case. So the next ability is -1. Sorin deals damage equal to the amount of life you've gained this turn to any target. So you can build up a bunch of food tokens, sack them all, and then just do a huge Sorin smack. There are obviously other ways to gain life as well, like with his Extort ability and any cards that have lifelink, but that first ability really ties well into the second ability. The final ultimate ability is a bit wonky in its wording. So -6, gain control of target creature. It becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. Put a lifelink counter on it if you control a white permanent other than that creature or Sorin. So you can't count the creature you're stealing, and you can't count Sorin. But if you have any other white card on the field, then the creature you've stolen gets a lifelink counter on it. So it's, I guess, a souped up version of being a vampire. This ultimate really doesn't have the same level of oomph as the other ones, but it does feel more practical and easy to make happen because you only have to activate the food token ability twice, right? Then you're up 2 food tokens. He's at 7 loyalty. You can swipe a creature and still have him kicking around. So ultimately, I think this is a really solid card, and it's sweet to see Soren's origin story put out in this way that really does work. Now, the final Flipwalker we have to take a look at is Grist, the Voracious Larva. So Grist is 1 green for a 1/2 with Death Touch. Whenever Grist or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it entered from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, you may pay 1 green. If you do, exile Grist, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control. Now, this is the only one of these planeswalkers that we don't actually really know 100% what the origin story is. But if I was to guess based on this ability, it seems like Grist was a special insect that had the capability of becoming a planeswalker and somehow died and came back to life, was reborn somehow, and during that process, Grist's planeswalker spark ignited. Now, Grist, for a part of their existence, wasn't really aware of humanoids and was really just focused on insects and would summon swarms of insects to come and feast. And they would travel like a plague of locusts, consuming everything in their path. So when you look at the other side with Grist the Plague Swarm, that is actually just the insect Grist inside a gigantic swarm of insects. So at the top, it definitely looks like a singular being with these giant Reaper blade arms. But if you look at the bottom, even if the artwork is a little bit blurry, you can see that it's made up of numerous insects. And this is a really, really cool concept for a planeswalker, and I've always wanted to know more about how Grist functions. So, speaking of how it functions, let's talk about the abilities on the planeswalker side. Starting with 3 loyalty, the +1 ability is create a 1/1 black and green insect creature, then mill 2 cards. Put a Death Touch counter on the token if a black card was milled this way. This feels really, really solid in terms of defensive capabilities for your planeswalker. You make a 1/1 that can chump block no matter what, but if a black card gets milled into your graveyard, now it's got Death Touch, which is either going to make your opponent not want to attack, or it's going to let you get favorable trades, which is fantastic. The second ability is -2, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Not too shabby at all. And -6, for each creature in your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 black and green insect. I really like this ultimate. I like the way it ties in to the first ability where you're milling cards into your graveyard, hopefully feeding creatures into it, and you get these insectile versions that have all the abilities of the original creature, but it's almost like their soul has been transported into an insect and is part of Grist's body. So this is some absolutely intense and epic flavor. Overall, I think these planeswalkers are all winners. All right, now it's time to talk about the Cowboy Bebop situation. Now, this isn't the first time that Cowboy Bebop has shown up on cards, right? But this is the first time it's shown up on Magic cards. And before we even look at the cards, I'm just going to tell you right now, there is a trailer out over on the Magic Japan YouTube channel, and it is amazing. It's an homage to Cowboy Bebop, but it's done with the characters from Thunder Junction. And I've watched it a whole bunch of times already, and I'm gonna watch it again after this video because I am super hyped. Now, let's take a look at the Cowboy Bebop Magic card crossover. On the screen, you're gonna see Japanese cards because this is a Japanese exclusive. So, since most of you don't read Japanese, I'll tell you what we got on the screen. The white card is Ossification. That's the enchantment that's 1 white and 1. You enchant one of your basic lands with it. When you do, you get to exile one of your opponent's creatures until they get rid of the enchantment. So you can do that with creatures or artifacts, actually. Then you've got Disdainful Stroke. That's the blue spell, which is 1 blue and 1, and you get to counter a spell that costs 4 or more. The black spell is Go for the Throat. 1 black and 1, destroy target non-artifact creature. The red spell is Lightning Strike, 1 red and 1 for an instant that does 3 damage to any target. And the green is Snake Skin Veil. 1 green lets you go ahead and give your creature +1/+1 counter and gives it hexproof until end of turn. Now, it's not just magic cards, right? On top of that, they are doing postcards of these, but the most exciting are the playmats and the sleeves. Oh my god, the Oko playmat is incredible. I absolutely love the way this looks, and I desperately want one, but I shall remain desperate because these are insanely limited. It's ridiculous. So basically it works like this. You get postcards by going and playing in events, basically spending $20 on cards, whatever it is, in the equivalent of Japanese currency. You're spending about $20 American. You get these postcards, and then certain people who get the postcards will end up winning either sleeves or playmats. Now, the breakdown of these is there's only 160 sets of each of these sleeves, and there's only 40 of each playmat. So these are going to be ultra scarce, and there is zero chance in this world that I will ever get one, unfortunately. But the last thing I want to talk about, my friends, is the loot travesty, okay? This is becoming a real problem for me. My buddies over at the game store are having a field day with this, announcing at the beginning of tournaments saying, hey, guess what? The Magic Historian's here, and he'll happily sign your loot cards. You guys know how much I ranted about this little goof bag. Look at this awful little plushie that I was given as a joke. So the joke keeps extending. Not only are they saying, hey, he'll sign your cards at the beginning of the event, but guess what's taped up on the store's wall now? Take a look at this. This was hanging on the register of the game store as well. This picture saying that me and Loot are best friends forever. Well, I'll tell you right now, we have never been friends, and I will never be friends with Loot. But over at my LGS, the guy who runs it has decided it would be hilarious to do a Loot promotion where anybody who sends money to the game store's PayPal on my behalf using the link that I have in my comments, he automatically includes a Loot. So I get the amount in store credit that I can use to get whatever I want, but it comes along with a Loot, and multiple people have already opted to do this. So he is giddily ordering up all of the loots from all these different distributors. He's cleaning up all these loots that he is going to thrust upon me in some undesirable fashion, because he was saying today, well, I can't just hand them over. So this unending loot nightmare is just getting more out of control, where people are talking about making fan art of me kissing Loot on the mouth and all this other insanity, and I don't need this in my life. So we're going to talk about that and some other ridiculousness tonight in a live stream over on my other channel. We're also going to talk while we're there about the Jace situation, because more information has come to light that shows that this Jace Ashiok Loot connection is actually supposed to be something that happened in the Phyrexian arc, and Jace being Ashiok never actually happened on Thunder Junction. So if you're interested in hearing about that, you can come on over to the live stream where we'll be talking about it tonight. But either way, that's all the news we have for today. So thanks for coming, hanging out, my friends. I will see you all either in the next video or in tonight's stream. Big shout out to my patrons. You guys rule.